Okay, hello everybody, and we are back for another stream. Okay, I have a list of things we're going to go through today, and we're going to talk a little bit about combining realities and how that starts to work after a while, and how that might take a lot of trial and error to be able to find people to actually be able to combine realities with, because it's not as easy as it was when we were in our human realities. It's not as cut and dry, right? We thought we had standards when we were humans, and it was kind of a joke. We'd say, oh, I've got standards. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that reality. I'm not taking that job. I don't want to be with that person. I don't want to live in that apartment. But that's all our ego stuff, right? I mean, it's a totally different reality when you're living with other people and you're all trying to come from your highest place. And that's where it can get kind of tricky. So that's what we're going to unpack today. Now, I don't have the chat up yet. I'll put it up in about 30 minutes. I like to get a topic out first and then I'll check it. So I do check it. I am live. I have a lot of people ask me that because I don't respond to my chats. But it tends to distract me a little bit. So I like to get something out first. And then we can go. Okay. Combining realities. This is something that when we're in our human realities, it seems easy, right? You meet someone, whether it's, even if it's friends, it doesn't matter what the relationship is. So if we get into sexual relationships and romantic relationships, that's kind of can be a different topic because that does shift. That does shift and change as you go through your awakening, as you go through your, people call it a dark night of the soul. But it really is a combination of kind of everything that's happened in your life, but it all happens at the same damn time, right? So we always kind of live in darkness as humans, but we don't realize it. But when it all kind of compounds on us, like we either lose everything all at once or we get everything we wanted, and we almost get everything we wanted, and then that shit falls away and we didn't get it. That was mine. Or we have everything we want and we're still not happy. Or just our whole life just starts to implode on us. Everything we thought we needed to be happy just starts going away. So we kind of get hit with everything that is distorted in a human reality all at one time. And our whole reality starts to collapse. And a lot of people will say a dark night of the soul. That's what that is. But really, if you look back on your human existence, you're going to realize, well, hell, the whole thing was kind of miserable, really. I mean, it was kind of, we would hit pockets of happiness, but because our body vibration was so low, we never could sustain that. You know, we couldn't live in happiness. That's why it would only come around every once in a while. We'd hit a pocket there, we'd hit a pocket there. But we couldn't sustain it because our body vibration is too low to sustain it. Oh, I could get super technical on that, but I can't 100% remember. When you look at frequencies of joy and bliss and magic, where they fall, I know they fall in the 5 and 6s, maybe the 700 range of hertz as far as vibration. I don't remember exactly, but your human body is setting in 3s, okay? And that's why you'll see the human realities defined as the third dimensional, you know, and people think that means physical dimension. And that's not what that means. Third dimension is not physical. It's just the consciousness you work from. The consciousness is the third dimension. It is a human consciousness. You know, it has nothing to do with a physical reality. And if you're labeling a reality, people think when you get into 5-dimensional realities, you don't have a physical reality. You still have physical reality. It's just more of a soul aligned reality. I wouldn't even say it is 100% soul aligned because we haven't started that yet. That comes in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 dimensional realities where you start aligning things. And that's where I have a lot of people jump off for a while. You can't jump off forever, but you'll jump off for a while because they're not ready to leave certain things. You know, they have identity around things. You know, they don't want to leave that person, that job. They don't want to do that because they have identities around it. They have identities around that friend group. They have identities around, you know, who they were, even if it's not who they are anymore. And I would see that a lot when you would meet people and they want to tell you about something they did 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and it seems so disjointed from where they're at right now, but that was where they would kind of want to go back to. That was an identity they had. That technically they'd already lost that identity. The only person really keeping it alive at that point was them, to keep wanting to come back and drag it back into the present. And you would see a lot of that. So when we go through a dark night of the soul, which some people, like I say, they'll also see it. People call it an awakening. But when you're through that and you're going through that, dark night of the soul, you will find yourself sort of in a, oh, sorry, my hair is like bothering me today. I'm distracted with it a little bit. You're going to find yourself kind of in the middle of everything at once, and it feels super heavy, and we have to kind of look at everything in our life that's not aligned, but we don't even know that's what we're doing yet. We just know certain things don't make us happy yet. Most of the shit we just leave behind because we don't even know what to do with it. What people call it, a lot of people call it like a midlife crisis, because a lot of people go through this at a certain point of their DNA, you know, so that's why you get to that midlife crisis. It's a thing, right? It's a thing because everyone hits that certain thing in their DNA. There's groups of people that's when they start leaving certain things behind. They start having a crisis of who they are. You know, it's a human thing. It's nothing to do with that particular person in a sense, even though it does. But when it happens to a lot of people all at once, people want to sit there and label it. You know, they want to label it as though that's a pandemic, that's this, because that energy, that it hits your DNA at a certain point. And when it does that, you get to that spot in your DNA when everything starts to feel wonky. Things don't fit anymore. Things that made you happy don't make you happy anymore. You're in your own little crisis. So, and a lot of times that will happen. You'll see that more thrown around for men at certain ages, because men technically have always been a little bit left behind when it comes to ascension, because there has not been a lot of material toward men. You know, there aren't a lot of people talking about the men. You know, everyone talks about the women. I think I hit on this last time. You know, we got to bring the women along. I only want to work with women. I've seen people say that. I only want to work with women. I'm like, why would you only want to work with women? Why? Well, that just seems kind of funny when we start segregating out what we're going to be willing to do, who we're going to be willing. You're only going to assist part of humanity. You have to bring everyone along together. You can't just bring along, you know, half of humanity. The other half has got to come too. If not, we're going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And that means both physically, metaphorically, and physically. We're going to be doing a lot of the work if they're not here to help. So you kind of look back and see how all these things kind of got coined. You know, but there are just certain markers in people's DNA when things don't fit anymore. When it's time for them to start their awakening. Time for them to start their ascension process. Time for them to go through certain things, question who they are. I mean, there's just this time that it happens, and you start having to rearrange things, right? And a lot of the relationships you have don't fit anymore. A lot of times you go through years and years and years when you're kind of just pruning through old relationships, but you really don't have many new ones. If new ones when new ones come in, they only come in for like a little bit of time. You know, they don't come in for like a long period of time. You know, you go through a lot of people. They come in for maybe a couple months, and then the reality's kind of done. You kind of feel like you're fast forwarding through people. And there's a reason for that. You're fast forwarding through a lot of people because you can kind of see the timeline in a sense. Even if you're not 100% there yet to see the whole timeline, you recognize the energy. You kind of see it's unbalanced. Your universe puts an end to things very quickly that are not balanced. You know, right away it's going to be like, oh, that's just not balanced anymore. You got to go. You can't stay here. You can't stay in this relationship. You can't partner with this person because it's not aligned. And you start to see, oh, this isn't aligned either. It's going to collapse anyway. This isn't aligned. Why am I doing all the work? I know I got in a lot when I was in different parts of, after my kind of an awakening in the early phases of my ascension. Though I'd always feel like I'm, you know, always 100 steps farther than you are. Well, I think we are. That's our ego too. You know, we always feel like I'm so far ahead of everybody else, and we're not. But I remember I was doing everything in this. It was more of a, you know, work partnership. I was doing everything. I was signing out the contracts, putting all my money up, and this other person wasn't doing anything. But I just wanted this person to be part of it. But that was my issue. You know, that was my lack. That was my need for them to want to be there, because when it came to them having to do anything, they didn't want to do that. I'd be the one running around doing everything, and they'd be up there taking all the credit. You know, they want to show up for that, but they wouldn't show up for any of the work. That they were too busy for. You know, they couldn't kind of show up for that part. The heavy lifting they weren't there for, but they were fine to show up for everything else. And after a while, you start to see that, and you can't let those things continue. So you kind of fast forward through things because you have the consciousness now to see the unbalance of it. And when you have the consciousness to see the unbalance of it, the imbalance cannot stand, because you know it's going to collapse anyway. You're at far enough along in your ascension and your consciousness to know it can't last. So I might as well just end this shit now, because if not, I'm going to get dragged through it. I've gotten dragged through enough when I didn't know any better. Now I know better, so it's just no point. This is my issue, not theirs. I want them to care. I want them to care as much as I do, but they don't. So there's no point of me staying here and trying to make this shit balance, because they don't care. You know, it's always funny when you take your energy away from an unbalanced relationship, how fast it goes away, because the other person's not willing to pick it up. You know, they didn't care as much as you do. You were more invested. You wanted it more. You know, and then we kind of got to look, it's like, why did I want it more? What was it about that person? I wanted them to be part of it. Did I think they knew more than me? Did I think they brought credibility to what we were doing? You know, what's our story behind it? You know, because it is always going to be about us. It's not about them. Could I be mad at that person? Sure. But I'm really just mad at myself, because I was allowing this whole reality to take place. No, in another way, they were there to show me that. They were there to show me where I was still going to be in a disempowered state about these type of partnerships, which had been a theme of mine. In all partnerships I have been in, whether it be romantic or business or whatever, even friendships, there was always an imbalance in everything. But when we get to be able to see the imbalance, we have to correct it. And then we get to this other phase where everything, we will even put our toe in the water in any kind of, I'm just going to use the word relationship. It's going to pertain to friendships. It can pertain to romantic partners, though that does kind of shift and change as you go through your ascension process. Business partners, you know, the relationship you have with the mailman, it doesn't matter in a sense of who it is. You just want to look at the energy of it, you know, and after a while you get to a point where you can see right away it's not balanced. You can see right away you're a little more invested than someone else in the very onset. You can see right away how it's not energetically aligned, and you don't even go into it. You know, you don't even bother in a sense. You're like, that's okay. You know what? I can already see where this is going. Now, I can remember talking with people about certain concepts, and it would be a fun conversation for a while, but then it wouldn't be after a while. You know, it can become very argumentative, or, you know, you can hit a certain point with especially consciousness, where people kind of can only going to go so far with it, and they're like, I don't, you know, now it's a little weird. Before it was okay, now it's a little weird. But then they come back later and want to have some type of some type of relationship, right? It's like, why? We're totally, you can see by the first interactions we have, none of this is aligned. You know, why would you want to do that? You know, but in our human consciousness, we might have said, yeah, okay, I'll see how that goes. Where when you get to a point where you're like, that's going to go nowhere. There's no point in that. There's no purpose in that. You're going to be looking for the purpose in everything. And if you can't see a purpose, there's no reality. You know, we will always come from our highest place, our kindest place, but you can see where, why would I don't want a reality where it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't look like this is going to work. This is going to be another imbalance. It's already starting off imbalance. It's already starting off where, you know, for example, let me give you an example. I was in a relationship probably right after my awakening, early parts of ascension, and it was a romantic relationship where the person was like, well, don't talk about anything that you do. You know, don't talk about any of that stuff. We don't want to talk about it with anyone. I know you basically. And I'm like, well, I was already kind of out in a sense. You know, I had a website. I was doing different stuff at the time, but I was still doing stuff, metaphysical stuff, people might call it, you know. I'm still doing things. I was still doing that kind of stuff. So it's not like you're going to hide me. You know, one thing about me, it's hard to hide me. But I was willing to go along with it because there was a part of me that still wanted that type of relationship and wanted to be with that person. So you wanted to overlook these catastrophic red flags that this is not going to be aligned. You know, if someone's already trying to shift and ask you to compromise on a soul level and asking you to not share information you have, and when you get into higher line realities, a lot of what we do is share. You know, we share our consciousness with people. That's how you activate consciousness in other people. That's what you're supposed to do. And if you're out there and you're doing that, and then they don't want you to do that, or if you do it, don't talk about it, it's already not going to work. You know, you can't be with someone that wants to hide you, you know, right away. That's not going to work. So you can see where things we might have said okay to back then, now we're like, well, that's not going to go anywhere. There's no point in doing that. You know, even if people don't share the same consciousness you share, and this is going to be a little tricky, but we're going to kind of pull this one apart a little bit. Even if they don't share the same consciousness you share, you can find realities together. You know, everyone might not have the same idea of a soul-aligned reality, and really that's just kind of a heaven on earth reality. Not everyone's going to have that same idea of what that is. You know, my idea of heaven on earth might not be someone else's idea of heaven on earth. So you're going to have a lot of conflicting realities people are trying to build. And even if people come from different consciousness, you can still find a way to exist with people. And that's going to be a big part of a lot of people's journey, finding a way to exist with people. But everyone's got to want to give 100% of what they have to give. And you can exist with people who may be people that are completely unconscious, because they're really just the old unconscious aspects of you. And you can look at that person with love and go, yeah, that was me. I remember that. I remember that's totally me, and that was me too. It's just not me anymore. But you still love them, even though you can see the parts of you in that. Because if you reject them, you're really just rejecting what was part of you. So we do kind of learn to live with people from our highest place, and look how we set the tone of that reality, how the reality shifts. You can go back into a relationship you might have had with someone years ago, where you were in your human consciousness trying to live out that reality in a totally different timeline, you know, and now you go back, but you're coming from a higher aspect of you, and it's a totally different relationship. It's kind of a flow to it, you know. Who's going to do the dishes? Well, whoever sees the dishes, do the dishes. Who wants to go to the store? It's just, it's not this, I do my stuff, you do your stuff. There's no separation in that anymore. And when we're still separating off to do stuff, we're still separated inside. You know, I would see this a lot, and I used to do this too. You'd be one way at work and one way at home, you know, because you're not integrated. You're still separated off. If we're still seeing a disconnect in how we act around certain people, there's certain people we can't bring our highest aspects for, and how other people we can, because this person triggers us and this person doesn't trigger us. So there's a disconnect in a lot of that type of stuff. So you're going to find you're going to go through iteration after iteration of trying to get what you're going to feel is a balanced relationship. And it might not be with the most conscious person. And that can be, now I'm not saying that's going to last. Okay. Sometimes we get in these realities because you have to be able to show yourself that you can do it. You know, you have to be able to show your universe. You can hold your consciousness when everyone around you is not conscious. Not a judgment, just to explain that. Because you were at that point too, at some point. You know, we all start somewhere. We all start unconscious. Even though some people might be a little more plugged in than others, we all start there. We all start in that human consciousness. Other people might have more bleeding through at that point, but we are going to start there. Can you hold your consciousness around completely unconscious people? Are you going to go back unconscious again? Are you going to get in your ego? Are you going to start to play the ego game with, I don't want to do that. That's not my job. You know, I'm going to do this. You know, I don't want to get the groceries for everybody. I only want to get my groceries. I'm going to label them in the refrigerator. What's mine? What's somebody else's? That's all separation. You know, that's all not living in unity consciousness. Can you live in unity consciousness with unconscious people? Are you able to do that? Can you hold it? You know, can you be treated? Can you be in some situation where you are going to be treated not very well, but you still have to hold your highest all the time? Now, eventually you will feel like there will be a time to put an end to that, but sometimes we have to prove we can do it. No matter how crappy someone is, you still have to show up as your highest. And just equate it to when you show up in a reality, if you are coming from your highest aspect, your Christ aspect, your angel aspect, there's a zillion of them. You can go with your mermaid aspect. It doesn't matter. That can be a little distorted though, depending on which mermaid you're going to come from. Atlantean mermaid and Lemurian mermaid are two different mermaids. So you can feel into that one on your own. But when you're, can you come to your highest place? Look at when you were unconscious. And just if you separate off for a second and say, how would my universe treat me? How did my higher selves treat me when I was unconscious? Were they mean to me? Did they kick me while I was down? No, they always tried to give me a way out. I might not have taken the way out, but they were always there to show me, hey, you can go this way. You can go that way. You don't have to stay in this shitty situation. I'm going to present some other options to you. You might not like them. You might have thought I don't have a choice. Well, no, you don't like the choices you have. You have another choice, you just don't like them. They're not the sexy choice. So look at how you treated yourself. Look at how your higher selves treated you, how there was always sort of a guiding hand, even if you didn't realize. You know, a lot of your different aspects, you know, your galactic aspects coming through to bring your power through when you needed it. Your, you know, when it was time for you to stand up for yourself, there was always there somewhere. You know, you always had a second chance. Maybe every time you had to jump out of a reality that was collapsing, the mattress got a little thinner you landed on, but there was always something for you to land on. Your universe never left you with nothing. Never left you with nothing. It always left you with a choice. And if we ignored it long enough, the choice might get thinner and thinner, but there was always going to be an out. It was always going to present you with something else. You know, maybe we didn't recognize it, maybe we didn't appreciate it, maybe we still wanted to do it our human way because that was the only way we knew. But there was still another choice out there. You know, and now equate that when you show up as a higher self for someone else, you have to play that role. You know, you have to be that person. You have to love them, no matter how crappy they can be. Now, it doesn't mean you put up with disrespect. You know, you do, there are ways you kind of learn, you're going to pivot and learn to kind of work around a lot of this stuff. You know, you're going to learn to be open and honest with your communication on what you want out of every reality, what's kind of the expectation of the reality, what are our standards of the reality. A lot of times the expectations are kind of more for the your human ego, you know. You have a standard for the reality. But there are parts when you have to show up for people who you know, A, are never going to fucking show up for you. They're just not. You know that. They don't have the capability to show up for themselves. You think they're going to be able to show up for you? They're too preoccupied with their own life. But you have to show up for them because that's the role you're playing in that reality. So when we go to merge these realities together, you might be in realities for a while, living in the same house, you know, working with people, having a very shared reality. And to me, a shared reality is someone I see every day. If I'm not seeing them every day, if I'm seeing someone 2 hours every 6 months, that to me is not a shared reality. I have a much different standards for those interactions as far as I really don't care the decisions these people are making. But when you're going to present a reality and we're going to be living it every day, because that is going to affect your vibration, you do take on their karma in a sense. You know, you're going to take on their karma. If they haven't been through certain parts of their ascension process and now you're going to kind of be with them and you know you're going to stay with them for certain parts of that, maybe not all of it, but some of it, then you're taking on their karma. When they go through shit, it's going to flow down and you're going to go through it too. You're taking that stuff on with them. And that's the choice you have to make. Is that the agreement you had? And you have to really go deep inside to see that. Is that the agreement I have to be here? Or am I supposed to be here to a certain point and then I have to go do something else? And sometimes that's the answer. For a lot of people, I was there to a certain point and then I had to go do something else. They were still not done with their human realities. They didn't want to live soul on realities. That wasn't where they were. It wasn't their time yet. Sometimes I just would put it that way. It's not their time yet. When it's their time, they'll be back. Or they'll find someone else to guide them through that. And it might not be me. And that's fine. That's why there's got to be so many people out there sharing, because it's someone else they might resonate with at that point. But we have to be able to show up like that. And you're going to be around unconscious people to show you that. Can you hold it? And that'll be a big test. And I know there was a couple places I was going to go, and I was kind of in the journey I'm in now, where I knew I'd have to live with people that were not conscious. Old aspects of me. And could I do it? Could we find a flow? Could we all kind of find a flow on who does what? And all, you know, let me, I might love to do this, but you know, let me do this. I can do this and you do that. And can we respect? You know, like when I've got work to do, can you guys go do something else? You know, because I need the house for so many hours so I can do streams or do videos, even though I can do videos kind of with people in the house. But streams, I have to be, this exact location is the best the internet where it works. And sometimes you can tell from the streams it still kind of pitters out some. But it's really important to be able to kind of lay down the reality. You know, as humans, we didn't lay down the reality. We just kind of jumped in there to see, let's see how this plays out, you know? We didn't sit there and go, let me lay out this whole reality and what we expect. Because we were so afraid someone would say they didn't want to be in it. We never did that. You know, we never laid out what the reality was, what the standards were for the reality. But when you get into combining them and trying to live soul-aligned realities with people. Maybe some conscious, some not conscious. Everyone's at a different level of consciousness. If you're going to be helping someone break programming down, are you going to be able to do that? Is that your role to be here? Or is it just to provide, be someone's higher self? And to show them where you come from every time, no matter how shitty it can get sometimes, how you come from. How did your higher self, how did it assist you? And that's the role you got to take on. Because it was always there for you. If it was always there for you, if you were always there for you when you needed something, even though, like I said, the mattress got a little thinner because we ignored it. I can remember sometimes it was so obvious what I had to do as a human, and I just would not do it. And I was even what I would call semi-conscious at the time, and I knew it was a sign. I knew it was a sign, and I still wouldn't do it. I was like, I don't want to do that. Nah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'm sure it'll work itself out. We're kind of the perfect Bond villain in that sense. Like, I'm sure it's going to all work itself out. I'm not going to worry about doing any of that stuff. It'll be fine. I'm just going to let that all kind of pitter out on its own. I'm not going to worry about it. Look at where you did that. But look at where there was still, I had a teacher long ago that would say, there's always that little invisible hand behind the curtain. Go that way, go that way. Oh, you need to be in California by May, so I'm going to have to make sure you lose this job, by March so we can get over it. We can hit our mark by May. It's not going to be easy, but, I'm going to make sure this job's ending and you're going to be gone in a couple of months. You could see the windows that opened. And like I said, even though you could see the windows that opened, we didn't want to go through them because we didn't like the window. We didn't like the choice. That is not a sexy human choice. But a lot of these choices our universe tried to push us to were soul-aligned choices. We didn't know why we had to be in California by May, but we knew we had to be in California by May, so let's go. We didn't understand that. We didn't have the consciousness to see that, so technically we had no free will. We're just kind of we're on the roller coaster along for the ride, not knowing where we're going, and we're just kind of at the amusement park in a sense. The very distorted amusement park, just going through the rides, watching some things that fell out right from under us. Reality, we thought we were in. The timeline ended abruptly because we could have we saw it coming to him, but we didn't want to go. There's some timelines you're going to see to ride till the end. Because when you try to end them, from your human perspective, the shit won't end. And I had a job like that years ago. No matter what I tried to do, that reality would not end. No matter how many times I tried from my human ego to get out of that reality, I couldn't get out of it. Because it wasn't time yet. But when it ended like that. Just like that. And it was over. And it was years trying to get out of it. Years trying to finish one project. I knew I had to do one thing to get out of it. Well, at least that's what I thought I had to do. And it was every roadblocker in the world to get out of that project. It would stall for 8 months at a time. It was the most illogical thing in the world because I had a reason to be there. And not because I was going to make some big splash at this job. It was because I had to do my own different parts of my ascension journey, and this job paid for everything, and I never had to go to the office. I might have worked 2 hours a week. Some weeks I didn't even have anything to do. Because the project would stall for months and months and months and months and months at a time. But when it was over, it was over. So just feel into how you treated yourself when you were in some of your, if you want to call it dark night of the soul. I so much don't resonate with that term much anymore. I don't know if I resonated with it when I was going through it. I kind of felt like I went through it, not like all at once. There were different parts that were pretty intense. So probably had a lot of iterations of my, air quote, dark night of the soul. When you're going through your awakening, how did your universe treat you? When you're going through certain parts of your ascension, when you're in your ascension journey now, which we're all in certain different parts of ascension, even after you ascend, go through full body ascension, which means you bring your body through to 12th dimensional, your body sets in 12th dimensional vibration, frequency. Well, you're still going through different parts of clearing. There's always something else to do. We're never done. But how did your universe treat you when it was trying to pull you out of human reality? Did it give you a different choice? Did it give you a different choice lots of times and you kept saying, that's okay, I'll pass on that choice? That's how we have to show up for people. That's how we have to shape our new realities. And when we're in realities and we just can't align it, and I'm going to make this point and I'll go to the chat. When you're in a reality and you just can't align it, and you might have tried to align it for years, or you put years into something, with a relationship, and it's still the other person's still coming from their human aspect when the chips are down, and that's when you're going to see. It's easy to try to come from your highest aspect when everything's rosy. It's kind of like it's easy to be this gracious winner, but when you lose at something, let's see how people act then. When you're not at the height of your game anymore, how then are you going to show up? It's kind of a human analogy, but you get what I'm saying there. How are you going to show up then? When your life's looks like it's even from a human perspective, picture perfect, how are you going to show up? How are you going to show up then? And it's kind of the same thing. When it's not rosy, how do you show up? How did you show up for yourself when it was not the best? What was presented to you? What did you present to yourself? That's the kind of thing you want to go back to and remember. How kind was I to myself at that point? I always had an out. I didn't abandon me. I came back. Now that doesn't mean you're going to stay with people through everything, because there's going to be parts of this process where I've done my time here. I've done what I was supposed to do. The contract's complete. My soul agreement's done. I can move on to something else, and eventually, I might see this person again in a different timeline. Maybe I won't. It doesn't really matter, because you'll know when it's complete, and it'll feel complete. And you'll know when it feels complete and you're still kind of trying to hold on to it because maybe you don't like the next choice. So, okay. Let me open this up real quick. I think that's probably a good place. Let me see. If I have any questions, I'll take them now. I think that I don't have any immediately, but if anyone has a question, I'll take it. When we're combining realities, and I touched on this in the beginning, we're not all going to have the same dream. And even if you meet someone that has, is in the same space of ascension as you are, I'm not going to say the same consciousness. Everyone's kind of in and out of where they are with that, and that everyone will be at exactly the same place. Maybe they are. Maybe you are. I have yet to meet someone where I'm exactly at the same place with that. But if you are, and it still doesn't work, because what their soul purpose is isn't yours. What their soul dream is isn't yours. What the reality they're trying to create is not the reality you're trying to create. And I ran back into that years ago too, where this one person wants to create one whole reality, and that wasn't the one I saw. Now, I can't say I see the same one I used to see, but I knew it wasn't just that one. Looking back, I can say probably both of our service to humanity roles had a lot of limits on them. Who we wanted to work with, what we wanted to do, what we were willing to do. You can see the limits. When I look back, I can see the limits I had on what I wanted to do, and how I was I saw this linear path to get there, not realizing that it's not going to come in a linear path. It's going to be all around the barn to get to, if I ever do end up building that reality. It's not going to come by going A, B, C, D, and E. And that's what I was still trying to do back then. People are going to have their own version of heaven, and it might not be yours. And you might be able to coexist and have a shared vision of that. And then everyone has their own pockets of what that is to them. Or you might not be able to. I'll say a lot of times our galactic brothers and sisters, we come together to create stuff for a while, but really can't stay together long periods of time. That goes into a galactic war, and there's a lot of bad blood between a lot of the galactic races, which I don't get too much into that stuff, but you can feel it with certain people. Like, you're supposed to come together for certain things, but after that, you don't really want to be around them. You don't want to be all huddled up with them. They're not kind of like your soul family. It's like, that's galactic family. I'll work with them from time to time, but I don't want to be all huddled up with them. We have two different, our visions are just too much. They're not a lot. Our purposes are all over the place, and they're not the same. Even though it's all in service to humanity as a grander purpose, we don't need to commingle to create 100 things together. We just don't have to. You'll know when it feels like this is something we could do, and then still, vibrationally, that might shift. You might go 6 or 7 months on, or 6 or 7 years building a relationship, building something with someone, and then everything shifts, and you're like, yeah, I know this isn't aligned anymore. I need to go do this now, and they might want to go do something else. So it's more challenging in a sense, when you're building relationships, once you get to a certain space with your consciousness, with your body, when you're starting to trying to align or have aligned your life to a soul aligned reality, even though knowing you're always going higher to a more awesome one, looking at what's presented and what comes in, and is that aligned? Can I do that? Is that aligned? I don't know. Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? What really makes sense here? So just be aware. Be aware of where you are. Be aware of what other people's visions are. And I think that's where I'll leave it today. So, let me see. Oh, I do have a question. I will answer that. This is a question about God, which is kind of an interesting one. When you get into religion, and the question is, do I feel close to God? When you get into ascension, and you get into religion, okay? Religion is a separation of your aspect, right? We all have a God particle. A lot of people call it a God particle. Some people might call it a God aspect. I always kind of felt more of an aspect, not so much a particle, but I have described it as that because I've heard it described as that, though so I will kind of say it that way because it's kind of how I kind of felt into it and how I had heard it. But that is just kind of the prime creator of your life. So when you start embodying in God energy, then you're going to be in control of your life. There's no one out there anymore. There's no one out there to ask. There's no one out there to talk to. But if we go back into how would we treat ourselves, how do our higher selves treat you, a lot of people will separate that off and look at religion for that because they're still separated off in that sense. It's just a form. Jesus Christ had Christ energy, but it's just a form it came through. It's not the only form. People get attached to the form. They get attached to something else outside. There's nothing else outside. Everything is inside. You're in control of what you're doing. And if you want to give that power to something else, and religion is getting even stronger, I think, just because you're watching, like our realities didn't all collapse at once. Our ascension realities came, in different stages. And I think for the whole humanity as a whole, it's going to not collapse. Maybe some parts will collapse all at once. Like in COVID, everything kind of collapsed all at once in kind of small subsets. But it wasn't like a total, complete collapse. There was still stuff that was kind of still in place in a sense, even though a lot of stuff, it shined a light on a lot of stuff that did not work. So you kind of will get into these phases where if people are into religion, you have to be respectful of where they are, but it's still a very separated state. It's just the form. Feel more into the energy of what that means and don't get so hung up on the form. That's why a lot of times when we do embody in different energies that people would say are religious, some people have an issue with that if they're super religious. If they were either raised super religious or raised atheist. You could have an issue with those aspects and you have to clear the distortions you have around those aspects. Like with Christ energy, there's a distortion of savior. It's a savior distortion, trying to save everybody. So you have to go through that. Where are you trying to do that in your life? When you embody in Christ energy, where am I trying to save everybody? Where am I trying to do that? Why am I trying to play that distortion out in my realities? It's going to shine a light on that. Anytime you embody in a new energy, a new aspect, it's going to shine a light on everything that's not that aspect. Every distortion you have around that aspect. That's why just starting to hit the consciousness and bring it in, that's just the beginning. It can be years before you fully embody it because you have to work through everything that's not that. So it can be a touchy part when you're talking about certain aspects with people who are still very much in their reality of their separation of religion. And it doesn't matter what religion it is, it's still a separation state. Focus more on the energy and not the form. The form doesn't matter. It's the energy that matters. A lot of people, when you start to clear a lot of foot pain, a lot of people have a lot of foot pain during ascension, it's betrayal energy. And that goes back to the crucifixion. So there's a lot of ways you kind of can even feel some of those threads coming over in your ascension process. But you don't want to separate off into tying it so much to, it's just the energetics of it all. It's not one particular figure that matters in a sense. It's just how you're now embodying in that energy and what is not that energy. So I think that is it. I don't think I have anything else. So, okay. I think that's it. So, I will see everyone next time. Bye.